What did the Buddha refuse to answer about life? Not only those outside the tradition misunderstand, but also those within the tradition still harbor misunderstandings. Even during the Buddha's time, there were disciples who misunderstood him, with some misinterpreting the Buddha's teachings on the practice of contemplating the impurity of the body to the extent that they went on to commit suicide. Thus, occasionally in the scriptures, we hear the Buddha lament, "I did not say that. I did not teach that. I did not advocate for the theory of annihilation and nihilism." It is natural for Western scholars to misunderstand the Buddha's teachings while studying Buddhism. We misunderstand the Buddha, then convey his teachings inaccurately, leading to misunderstandings among future generations. Many people mistakenly believe Nirvana to be eternal death. However, Nirvana represents the supreme happiness of those who are liberated. It is a happiness that we can experience here and now because of our freedom, especially freedom from concepts. Part 1. The Buddha attained enlightenment on the mind, not the world or the universe. Science and the Buddha share a common purpose and desire, which is to end suffering. However, science, with its understanding based on the principle of mind knows objects, has assumed that reality is the material world. It is influenced by the understanding of suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path to the cessation of suffering, the Four Noble Truths, as belonging to the external world. Specifically, suffering, its cause, and its cessation depend on the world and living conditions. Naturally, the path to ending suffering is seen as changing the world and living conditions. Because of this understanding, science endeavors to explore the material world to change the world, conditions, and living circumstances so that people can be free from suffering. Reality is sensation. Contrarily, the Buddha, through observing and contemplating the interaction between the six sense bases and the six sense objects, realized that reality is sensation, is mind and not objects, based on the principle of mind knowing mind, not mind knowing objects. Therefore, he attained enlightenment about the mind, not about the world or the universe. He realized the Four Noble Truths as truths about suffering, the cause of suffering, the cessation of suffering, and the path leading to the cessation of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path pertaining to the mind, not to the objects, the world. Thus, the path to ending suffering is about changing the mind, not changing the world as understood by science. Therefore, the Dharma that the Buddha realized and preached is about exploring the mind, changing the mind, not about exploring and changing the world like science. For someone who has attained enlightenment, after correctly understanding and practicing the Dharma as preached by the Buddha, having ended suffering, having eradicated suffering, all necessary actions are completed. There is nothing more to do except maybe sharing their realization with those who are destined, but that is not a mandatory task. For them, whether the universe is square or round, long or short, impermanent or permanent, finite or infinite, the origin of humans and the world are no longer concerns to explore. Later, Buddhist schools failed to grasp the Buddha's enlightenment as being about the mind, not about the world. Due to their ignorance and understanding based on the principle of mind-knowing objects, they attributed to the Buddha enlightenment about the world and the universe. Therefore, their commentaries, interpretations, and scriptures primarily discuss the world, whether relative or absolute, attributing these ideas to the Buddha. Many people, even the majority of Buddhists, failing to understand the Buddha's enlightenment about the mind, mistakenly believe that the advancements of modern science increasingly validate the Buddha's pre-scientific understanding of the world. Part 2. 14 Questions Not to Answer. There was a disciple of the Buddha named Malunkyaputta who often asked questions about the world, the future, and humanity, questions of a metaphysical nature such as, will the world exist forever, or will it one day be destroyed? Does the world have a boundary, or is it boundless, finite, or infinite? The Buddha typically did not answer these questions, so Malunkyaputta became very upset and stated, "If the Buddha does not answer my questions, I will cease my practice." The Buddha called Malunkyaputta and asked, "Did I promise you when you took ordination that I would answer such questions?" "No, the world-honored one did not promise that." "Then why do you say that you will cease your practice if I do not answer those questions?" The Buddha then told the story of a man who was shot with a poisoned arrow. When a doctor was called to treat him, the injured man said, "Wait, first I want to know the name of the person who shot me, why they shot me, whether they had any grudge against me or my family. I want to know all these details before I agree to be treated." The doctor said, "If you spend your time trying to find out all these answers, you will die from the poison before all your questions are answered." The Buddha taught, each of us has our own sufferings and pains. If we only wish to ask such questions, then our sufferings and pains will never be cured. Therefore, I only teach what is beneficial to help you transform and heal your sufferings and pains. Realm of is and is not. The Buddha's teaching is practical in nature. The world-honored one taught only about suffering and the methods to transform suffering. Although he could answer the metaphysical questions, he chose not to because he knew they were not beneficial for practitioners. Furthermore, there are questions that cannot be answered not because the world-honored one did not know the answer, but because those questions cannot be answered within the binary framework of is and is not. Once, when the Buddha was in Kosambi, after a walk for meditation, he held a handful of simsapa leaves in his hand and asked the monks, "Monks, are the leaves in my hand more or less than the leaves in the forest?" The monks replied, "Blessed One, the leaves in the forest are far more than the leaves in your hand." The world-honored one said, "Just so. What I know is like the leaves in the forest, but what I have taught you is like the leaves in my hand." Why? Because what I teach is crucial for your transformation and healing. The things that do not aid in your transformation and healing, I do not teach. This story illustrates the Buddha's teaching's very practical purpose. We must devote our time to transformation and healing. However, people, including kings, officials, and even the Buddha's disciples, often enjoy asking metaphysical questions. There are altogether 14 unanswerable questions which the Buddha never wished to answer. The world is permanent, impermanent, both permanent and impermanent, neither permanent nor impermanent. The Buddha did not answer the aforementioned questions because any proposition among the four given would be incorrect. These four propositions are known as the tetralemma, and the Buddha's wisdom transcends the tetralemma, known as transcending the fourfold negation. Finite, infinite, both finite and infinite, neither finite nor infinite. The Buddha also did not answer these four questions because they are undetermined, avyakarta, meaning they are not declared or specified. The state of the Tathagata, the Buddha, after death is exists, does not exist, both exists and does not exist, neither exists nor does not exist. These questions fall into the same category of being undetermined, and the Buddha refrained from answering them to avoid engaging in speculative views that do not lead to the cessation of suffering, the ultimate goal of his teachings. The soul and the body. Are they one? Are they two? Louis de la Valle Poussin, a renowned Belgian Indologist and scholar of Buddhism, proficient in Chinese, Sanskrit, and Pali, made significant contributions to Buddhist studies in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. He taught at the Institut Catholique Paris, translated important works like Vasubandhu's Abhidharmakosha Shastra and Xuanzang's Chung Weishi Lun, treatise on the establishment of consciousness only, and raised critical questions regarding the Buddha's teachings. Cycle of karma and rebirth. Lavallée-Poussin noted the Buddha did not explicitly detail the mechanism of karma and rebirth. Without a self, Atman, or ego, Atma, who generates karma and who experiences its results? While the concept of reincarnation and karmic retribution is straightforward in Brahmanism due to the belief in an eternal soul, Atma, or life principle, Jiva, Buddhism's doctrine of non-self, Anatta, complicates this understanding. How can karma, its retribution, and the cycle of rebirth be explained without a self? Who is the doer of actions and the experiencer of their results? These concerns are highlighted in his last book, Le Dogme et la Philosophie du Bouddhisme, The Dogma and Philosophy of Buddhism, indicating his continued contemplation on these subjects despite his extensive studies and translations. Nature of the soul. The Buddha did not clearly define the nature of the entity that undergoes rebirth, the soul. Who or what undergoes the cycle of rebirth? Nirvana. Lavallée-Poussin questioned whether nirvana is a realm and, if so, where it is located and how one reaches it. The clarity regarding the nature of nirvana remains ambiguous to scholars, though he personally believed the Buddha provided clear teachings about nirvana. We also need to understand the questions posed by scholars to find ways to explain to those who study Buddhism later. The sutras mention two kinds of non-self. Personal non-self. Human beings, person, are described as non-self, anatta or nairatmya in Sanskrit. Upon closer examination within us, there is no permanent, unchanging entity that persists indefinitely. The self is defined as something permanent and unchangeable. If we analyze a person, we find 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. All 5 aggregates are impermanent and change from moment to moment. Nothing is unchanged, from physical form to feelings, cognition, and consciousness. These 5 streams are always changing. Nothing is permanent or eternal. Therefore, there is no self beyond these 5 aggregates. Dharma, non-self. Looking at objects like this table, that mountain, or the river, we also don't find anything that is permanent or everlasting. Thus, there is no self in beings, nor is there self in phenomena. Impermanence is the starting point. Everything changes. All phenomena are subject to momentary arising and ceasing, meaning they change at every moment like frames in a film. Many people feel negativity towards impermanence, but in reality, if there were no impermanence, there would be no life. It is because of impermanence that life exists. If there was a button to stop the world, everything would freeze and life would cease. Similarly, during a movie projection, if we press pause, all motion and images on the screen halt. Life exists thanks to impermanence. Without it, a corn seed would forever remain just a seed, never growing into a corn plant for us to harvest and eat. If things were not impermanent, a baby would always remain a baby and never grow up. If everything were permanent, sickness would never heal. Impermanence is wonderful, but why do we feel negative and pessimistic about it? In truth, impermanence is the foundation of life. Without it, there would be no life. Therefore, to say that impermanence is suffering is incorrect. The sutras often repeat the Buddha's dialogue with his disciples. The Buddha asked, "Is form permanent or impermanent? Are sensation, perception, mental formations and consciousness permanent or impermanent? The disciple answered, "They are impermanent." The Buddha asked, "If they are impermanent, do they lead to suffering or happiness?" The disciple responded, "Impermanence leads to suffering." This is not the Buddha's intention, but a misinterpretation in transmission. The Buddha had very intelligent disciples, but also some who were not. The notion that impermanence leads to suffering is not what the Buddha meant. Without impermanence, how could we attain enlightenment? We would remain ignorant forever. It is through impermanence that afflictions can become enlightenment. Impermanence is the root of transformation and peace. The obsession with the idea of suffering and the cycle of rebirth has distorted the Buddha's teachings. The dialogue between the Buddha and his disciples should go like this. Is form permanent or impermanent? Venerable sir, it is impermanent. If it is impermanent, is there a self? Venerable. Sir, there is no self. Impermanence negates the self because the self is something permanent, an owner. Thus, non-self and impermanence are one. Where there is impermanence, there is non-self. The soul is not a permanent self. Saying the soul and body are one is incorrect, but saying they are two is also incorrect because there is no unchanging permanent soul. In the Milinda Panha, a dialogue between the monk Nagasena and King Milinda, Menander, is recorded. King Milinda asked, "Venerable sir, are the soul and the body one or two?" True to the spirit of the Buddha's teaching, Nagasena did not directly answer. King Milinda said, "You agreed to answer any question I ask. Why do you not answer now?" Nagasena asked, "Your Majesty, are the mangoes in your royal garden sweet or sour?" The king could not answer because there were no mangoes in his garden. Nagasena then said, "Similarly, how can we talk about the soul being one with or separate from the body when there is no eternal soul?" This is a profound response. There is nothing permanent and unchanging, no self. So discussing whether the soul is one with the body or separate from it is incorrect. For example, a man commits an action in the year 2000. Let's call him the actor. By 2013, the consequences manifest, and we refer to the one experiencing these consequences as the recipient. People ask the Buddha, is the doer and the sufferer the same person or two different people? According to conventional understanding or relative truth, the doer and the sufferer are the same. The one who sows maize harvests maize, the one who plants beans harvests beans, the one who sows the wind reaps the whirlwind. However, from the perspective of absolute truth, it's not so because everything is impermanent and subject to change. From 2000 to 2013, the man has undergone significant changes in terms of form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Comparing the doer with the sufferer shows significant differences. To say they are the same falls into the erroneous view of eternalism, clinging to self. Conversely, saying they are entirely different falls into another wrong view called annihilationism. Therefore, the Buddha stated, "I avoid both extremes and preach the Dharma from the middle way." The middle way transcends both extremes. Thus, all 14 questions mentioned cannot be answered because those questions imply that the world, the Tathagata, or the soul are permanent entities with a self. If the world is impermanent and subject to change, then saying the world is permanent is incorrect. Saying it is impermanent is also incorrect in the sense that it doesn't capture the full nuance. Saying it is both permanent and impermanent is incorrect. And saying it is neither permanent nor impermanent is also incorrect because such statements still trap one in the concept of self. If the world is without self, lacking any eternal, unchanging essence, then saying the world is finite is incorrect. Saying it is infinite is incorrect. Saying it is both finite and infinite is incorrect. And saying it is neither finite nor infinite is also incorrect, because such views still entangle one in the notion of an inherent self. Understanding the concept of personal non-self, anatta, and Dharma, non-self, Dharma nairatmya, helps us see why the previously mentioned questions are misguided, much like King Milinda's question to Nagasena. Are the body and soul one or two? Without an eternal soul, without a self, such a question cannot be answered as either one or two. Not answering does not mean not knowing, but from the perspective of the middle way, those mental categories cannot convey the truth. Categories like existence, non-existence, arising, ceasing, being, non-being, subject and object are all mental constructs, and any answers derived using these categories are incorrect. Therefore, all 14 questions remain unanswered, for answering them would contradict the middle way, which transcends wrong views, including views of existence, non-existence, permanence, annihilation, coming, going, unity, and diversity. In the Katyayana Sutra, the Buddha states that right view is seeing beyond the categories of existence and non-existence. Transcending these categories also means transcending the concepts of arising and ceasing. In the Anuradha Sutta, when Anuradha was confronted by teachers of other sects, asking whether the Tathagata exists after death, does not exist, both exists and does not exist, or neither exists nor does not exist, Anuradha refused to answer. The world-honored one, my teacher, never taught me to answer within those four categories. He said such questions are undetermined, unanswerable. The outsiders thought Anuruddha was unable to answer their questions due to his novice status and let him go. Anuruddha then went back to the Buddha and recounted the incident. Blessed One, this morning I was confronted by teachers of other sects, and this was my response. Please guide me so that I may answer better next time if confronted again. The Buddha clearly taught, Anuradha, I am sitting right here in front of you. Look at me and answer me. Is the Tathagata this form? Venerable Sir, no. Then, do you mean the Tathagata exists apart from form? No, Venerable Sir. Can the Tathagata be found in sensation? No, Venerable Sir. Can the Tathagata be found outside of sensation? The Buddha asked Anuradha such questions, moving from form to sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. The Buddha said, Anuradha, I am sitting right here, yet you cannot find me, cannot find a Tathagata who is eternal and everlasting, even while I am still alive. How could you possibly find the Tathagata when this form is no longer present? If you cannot grasp the Tathagata while I am alive and present right before you, why would you think you could grasp the Tathagata after my parinirvana? The Buddha was explicit. One can never find an eternal, everlasting Tathagata, even while the Tathagata is still alive. We do not answer the 14 questions, not because we are incapable of answering them. To answer would be incorrect since those questions are based on conceptual categories such as arising and ceasing, existence and non-existence, unity and diversity. If we look through the lens of the middle way, concepts like being and non-being, existence and non-existence, sameness and difference, finiteness and infiniteness, and so on, are merely mental categories that fail to convey reality accurately. Therefore, any answer given cannot fully capture the truth. This is not because we don't know and thus don't answer, or know but refuse to answer. According to modern science, matter and energy, from clouds to flames, abide by the first law of thermodynamics, indicating neither creation nor destruction. Antoine Lavoisier, a scientist, stated this: if all phenomena neither arise nor cease, then they also do not exist in the binary terms of existence and non-existence, since the concepts of arising, ceasing, and existence or non-existence are interdependent. If there is no birth or death, how can there be eternal death or eternal life? If there's eternal death by principle, shouldn't there also be eternal life? Part 3. Conclusion. The Buddha's teachings, skillfully presented, are thus known as well-spoken, sanditiko. While extolling the Dharma, if we do not articulate skillfully, listeners may misunderstand, potentially causing harm. We must be adept in speaking the Dharma, ensuring that all we say is well-spoken. Listeners of the Dharma also need to be skillful in grasping the true Dharma without getting stuck in words and personal biases. There must be cooperation between the speaker of the Dharma and the listener. The speaker needs to understand the mindset of the listener. We must speak in such a way that what we say directly touches the heart of the listener. Listeners of the Dharma must open their hearts and let go of their prejudices to truly receive the authentic Dharma. Otherwise, what they perceive could end up being harmful. The parable of the snake tells the story of a teacher named Asla who misunderstood the Buddha's teachings and practiced incorrectly, stubbornly refusing the advice of other teachers. The Buddha called Asla and questioned, "I did not teach that way. Why did you understand it so?" He then illustrated with the example of catching a snake. If one does not know how to catch a snake properly, they could be bitten and killed. A skilled person uses a forked stick to pin the snake's head down and grabs it directly behind the head, not by its tail. Similarly, when listening to the Dharma, if we are not careful to understand it correctly, it could turn harmful to us. The parable of the snake is a unique scripture, for no other teacher has declared that their teachings, if misused, could be dangerous, much like medicine that can save lives but can kill if used improperly.